and everyone is here. If any more professors are in the audience and would like to share their experience, please raise your hand and I will add you to the panelist list. The plan for today is the following. So we have released the challenges now. Thank you so much, Tim and Ernesto, for working hard at preparing those challenges. The students who don't know what it entails to prepare the challenge. Usually that means a lot of phone calls, meetings, emails with each of the companies, trying to develop a set of questions that are interesting for the students, useful for the company, fit well with the theme of the event and X-Culture's mission in general. One of the added challenges always is that we have to deal with the top managers who are not always available at all times. And so often what happens is just simply scheduling the event, scheduling the meeting is a challenge. So for example, this time some companies responded very quickly, others are in the midst of a busy season, and so it was very hard to get hold of some of the key people and make those arrangements. But eventually Ernesto and Tim, helped by other admin members, succeeded, got the questions, we developed the challenges. And so what we would like to do today is two things. One, the goal is to review the challenges so you have a little bit better idea as to what you need to be working on. And my apology, I know in my email yesterday, I said that the teams will be assigned to the challenges, whereas I was later reminded that those assignments have already been made. So apparently by now, each team knows what challenge they will be working on. However, you might be interested in the other two challenges, and you might be interested to see what the questions, who the client is and what the questions are for the other teams. So you are welcome to listen to those. So we'll have a quick review. And then after that, I also wanted to devote a little bit of our time to sort of helping you learn from the mistakes and successes of the previous generation of X-Culture students. I went to my archives and found records and copies of reports, presentations, and one-page executive summaries that the students prepared at the events last year in Macerata, in Nashville, in Calgary, in Miami. I didn't keep as many copies as I should have. As you understand, in most cases, when we show up for the presentation, we see it sort of on the screen and on paper. And so I should have probably snapped more pictures of those paper handouts, but I have enough to show you what a more, let's call it effective one looks like, not necessarily better, but more effective, and what a less effective one looks like, as well as show you some of the slides, and again, provide some comments on how to, basically, so you can learn from those mistakes. And so I suggest we start with Tim, Ernesto, and I'm not sure if Karen has anything to add about the challenges themselves. Maybe just a quick review of who the clients are, what they're asking for, maybe some clarification of the questions, and then we'll go into more kind of general suggestions and tips for how to prepare a winning presentation. Would that be a good strategy? It seems like Tim and Ernesto were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Tim, maybe you want to start?
Tim, can you hear us? Seems like your microphone is muted. Hello, hello. Not sure what.
Tim, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Whoa.
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
maybe Ernesto, let's mute our microphones while Tim is speaking, so that.
Oh yeah.
How's it coming through now? Not good.
It seems like the echo is Tim's problem, because even when we're muted, it still gives us feedback. Tim, we should be able to hear you, so please go ahead. For some reason now Tim has disappeared altogether.
It is growing, and so their revenues is growing as a consequence. So basically they receive funding from external funding based on the promise that the price of that land is going to increase. And if you look at the balance sheet and their recent history, they have been actually very successful in doing so. So this activity of revitalization of the area has been generating a high amount of revenues. And here in the background information you can find a description of how it works. So again, I think that this is a challenge where international students can actually provide a lot of ideas, because we all live in cities around the world, and we know what in our city they have been doing in order to revitalize some maybe dismissed industrial areas. So we can have plenty of ideas about the sort of infrastructure that can make a difference in a given area. So basically, again, we have to provide ideas about a specific area that is the East Victoria Park, and we have to think about a possible infrastructure that might revitalize that area. That is also very close to the Stampede Park. As you probably know, we will be visiting Calgary just a few days after the Stampede, actually at the very end of the Stampede season. So it is actually very close inside, very close to that stadium, and we have to think about possible development infrastructure that might make this area attractive. The perception, speaking to managers, is that Calgary is a very large area, but most of the people tend to live outside of the city, in the suburban areas. So during the weekend, or maybe late in the afternoon, especially maybe in winter time, the city tend to be pretty empty in a way, or not as lively as they would like it to be. So they have to find a way in order to attract people to the city center. And we have also been providing a map, because actually there are plenty of names and complexity here. So there is this area that is called the Riverside area, that is the red line. This is on the page with the maps. But then there is also another area that is inside this one, that is the focus of our challenge, that is the East Victoria Park. And inside this East Victoria Park, there is actually a space that is actually available in order to think about a new infrastructure.
Yeah.
And yes, we have also been providing the balance sheet as for the airport of Calgary. They have been giving us a lot of information. There are some links where you can actually find the master plan about the area. So again, we are very lucky, I would say, in respect, for example, to last year. Last year, for example, in Italy, all the information were in Italian, so it was very difficult to access the original documents. On the opposite, this year we have actually plenty of information about the area and about the municipality of Calgary.
Yeah. So Ernesto, talking about this challenge, do I understand correctly that the goal or the task is to answer the following question? So there is the city of Calgary, and there is an area within the city that is still somewhat underdeveloped, but it has a huge promise. And they're basically asking students, if you had some undeveloped land in the middle of a big city in the Canadian villages, what can you do there to attract businesses, people, to make it more vibrant and kind of lively there? What kind of infrastructure would you add? What kind of, I don't know, rules would you impose? What kind of events you would organize? Things like that, right?
Yes. And what is interesting is that we do not have a big capital constraint, because basically if this investment is going to make the price of houses and land higher, then we will have additional revenues in taxation, and those additional revenues will go to fund these infrastructures that we are going to design. So we have to think about facilities that might be important for this area?
A couple of things, again, that may be relevant as the background about Calgary and this specific city. Calgary is one of the major cities in the province of Alberta. And Alberta, that's the place where Canadians extract oil. So it was one of the provinces that was one of the first to pay off its all external debt. When I lived there, they were making so much money that at the end of each year, they had a budget surplus. And so I think it was like twice a year or 3 times a year, they would send us checks. I think it was like $600 per person. And so I had 2 kids. So at that time, they would send me like $2,000, $2,500 every few months, just because they were making more money than they could spend. And they would spend some of it on infrastructure, some of that on education, but some they literally just send us checks. I'm not sure if they're still doing that, but it's a very, very rich province that, you know, basically one of the richest, in fact, probably the richest province in Calgary, in Canada, on the per capita basis. So Ontario obviously is bigger as a, you know, general size, but it also has more people. And so it's the city, you know, that now is not doing as well because now the oil prices went somewhat down. So, but it's still basically the oil capital of North America. So all major oil companies have their offices and usually headquarters in Calgary. So it's almost like, I don't know, think about like Abu Dhabi of the United Arab Emirates, or I'm not even sure what would be the equivalent in other, you know, areas. But it's essentially an oil capital with a lot of money, relatively rich people, good education, safe, nice scenery. So you can go wild when, you know, it comes to what you can do with this area. So budget shouldn't be a huge constraint, and there are not many other constraints as far as politics and things like that. So anything that you ever wanted to have in your city, propose it. There is a good chance they will actually do it.
So yes, we have to think about something that actually would make a difference in sort of characterizing Calgary downtown. Yeah. That is consistent with what is already in Calgary and in the surrounding area. Yeah. Yeah. If you are looking for additional information, there are 2 very rich links that are the one that is River District's Master Plan and East Village Master Plan. If you click there, you will have you can download very large documents with plenty of information about what they have been doing. Yes, it is this one. So the Master District's Master Plan and the East Village. The community revitalization is actually an explanation about how they generate their revenues.
Yeah, actually, this time you're right, Ernesto. We have much more information about the companies than usual. I'm not sure if that's because they're public companies and all that information is available.
Yes, yes. Maybe this is they are all you know. 2 of them are sort of public companies in the sense that I say public, not in the sense that they are in the stock exchange, but they provide public services. I don't know if you mean in that sense. And the other one, Lake Louise, is a tourist attraction. So of course they provide a lot of information. They have been sending us also links to videos about the area. So we really have a big amount of information for all the 3 companies. So what we need is actually ideas from people that are coming from the other side of the world, so that can think out of the box and provide ideas to Calgary. So the expectations are actually high because actually they know that we are coming from all sides of the world. The executives will be coming at the presentation and they are very anxious to hear about our ideas. So we have actually to try to brainstorming in our teams in order to come with something that is different and something that they do not expect actually.
Tim, I'm not sure. I think your sound should be working now if you want to. So Tim made here a few comments. One about the webinars with the companies. Tim, can you talk? Let's see if you may have better information than I do. Tim?
Yeah, boss, can you hear me?
We can hear
yes.
you. Yeah, it works now.
All right. On June 24th, we'll have a call with each of the companies.
Yeah.
And one of the ambassadors will be sending out information on what time it is. What's really important is between now and then for the students to start researching their company and formulating their questions. And we're asking each team to have at least one person on the live webinar and to have at least 2 questions submitted ahead of time. This is your chance to clarify the challenge if you have any questions or to get additional information. As Ernesto mentioned, there's tons of information, so you're going to get overwhelmed a little bit by it, but you have 2 weeks to start thinking about it and then clarify it on the webinar. Every one of the client companies is very, very excited about this.
Also for the webinars, not only questions, but you can also float some initial ideas and ask for feedback. So maybe you are onto something and you will know it and you will work more on it, but maybe some of the ideas they will say, oh, we tried it in the past, it didn't work. So you know that you don't need to waste your time on that. So come prepared, and the more you ask, the more you present, the better prepared you will be after the webinar.
Yes, and let me add that in the past, even for Italy, where we had actually small, medium enterprise, not very large one, for example, the Nuova Simonelli that was actually producing coffee machine, there is one of the students that has been working on the challenges that was actually one of our ambassadors that is now working for the company.
Yeah.
So think that if you are going to have very good presentation, some of you might maybe receive an opportunity. Maybe it will not be soon an employment, but it might be an internship, for example, for a few months. And if you are doing good inside that internship, maybe that might be your future employer. So take also this as an opportunity in that sense.
Yeah, same thing, by the way, with Miami. So we had DHL, they hired, I think it was like 5 or 6 people. So some right away on the event and then some a little later. And then Hard Rock International hired 1 person right away and then another one a little bit later. So again, it's not something that we can promise. So if you're going there to get a job, I cannot guarantee that that will happen. But in the past, in many cases, companies were impressed with some students so much that they offered them some sort of an employment or internship, either on the spot or shortly after. There is a question from Duncan if students can attend webinars for other clients. Of course you can. So let's say you've been assigned to Lake Louise, but you also want to learn more about, let's say, the city of Calgary or the airport. Obviously, you can attend that webinar. In fact, I encourage you to. And so one thing we will be doing a little differently this year compared to the previous years, regardless of what challenge you're working on, you will be visiting all 3 companies. In Italy, we had 4 companies, in fact, and so we had to choose which one we go to. And as I said, what many people then had this sort of kind of FOMO syndrome, fear of missing out. So I couldn't choose which one I want. Eventually I chose one. I like it very much. But to this day, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should have also seen the other 2. I didn't have that option. So this time you will be going to all 3 companies. So even if it's not your client, you will still be meeting with their management. You will still have the company visit. So attending the webinars in advance will definitely help you a lot. And you will be better prepared when you have the company visit. So please do attend. And also somebody is asking if how the teams will be assigned to challenges. Madalena, you might want to explain that. Again, my apology, in the email that I sent yesterday, I was not aware that our wonderful ambassadors already made the assignments to the challenges. It's always good when more is done than you know. And so I assumed we will be assigning you to challenges a little later, but turns out we already made those selections. So Madalena maybe can give us a little bit more information.
Yes, I was trying to answer Andrea's question because actually all the students should have been addressed by their ambassadors. We have 3 groups of ambassadors. Each group is made by 6 ambassadors, and each group of ambassadors is in charge of 10 teams of students. So during this week, we conducted 14 webinars, in order to start answering your first questions. And we also tried to do some icebreaker games. And so if you haven't heard anything yet, please let me know, because I will add you to the mailing list, and I will tell you which team you have been assigned to.
Yeah.
Yes.
A couple other things. So in your challenges, you have here suggested schedule. Again, you don't have to follow these deadlines other than the webinars on the June 24th. But I strongly encourage you to sort of try to stick as close as possible to these deadlines. What has happened in the past, at least to some of the teams, was that they didn't do much in advance and sort of saw the challenge for the first time, so to speak, on the side when they did the company visit. And obviously at that time, you don't have much time left to finish up your challenge. You literally just don't have much time. So try to prepare as much as possible in advance. Obviously, there will be some changes to what you've done once you talk to the company, once you see it. But it will definitely not only alleviate some stress, but also you will have a much better product. So try to have your drafts way in advance and then polish them, rather than have nothing and then try to do everything on the last day or during that week in Calgary. Also, coaching. So 10, if I understand correctly, ambassadors will be available to provide coaching help to you. And so we have some ambassadors, and I'll talk to Madalena a little bit later about that as well. We also have 2 master's students from my university who are in a course that is literally called Coaching of Global Virtual Teams. And so they too will be able to provide some help, and all of them are mature, and some of them are literally in their 40s with a lot of experience in management. For example, the 2 MBA master students from UNCG. So they will be available to help you with all kinds of things, as Madalena said, with some icebreaker and team building games in the beginning. But then as the project progresses, you can turn to them for additional information about the challenges themselves, for help with team coordination and management if needed, like scheduling and workload distribution and those kinds of things. If any conflicts happen, maybe somebody is disrespectful in your team, maybe somebody is not participating hard, again, they will be able to do a little bit more investigation, help you. And if it comes to the point where it's a serious problem where some action needs to be taken, again, we will be relying on their investigation and advice to decide what to do with the person if somebody is not doing their share or behaving inappropriately. And then also they're very useful in when it comes to getting feedback and getting feedback on your rehearsal of the presentation. Again, it's not even that they need to be smarter and more experienced than you are. They may not be, and they may not necessarily know the answers better. But just by being there for you as an external set of eyes, to kind of look at your either draft of your slides or the presentation, as you're rehearsing it, I think that external feedback will be extremely useful. Maybe, your slides are too wordy, or maybe not detailed enough, or maybe you speak too slow, too soft, too fast, or maybe you're not explaining some points clearly. They will be able to spot it, as I said, not only because they may have a little bit more experience, but just because they're looking kind of unbiased external opinion. And so I would strongly encourage you to use this resource. I know in the past teams often felt uncomfortable showing what they have. They were a little embarrassed. Nothing to be embarrassed about. They're not there to judge you. They're there to help you. So I would definitely use that opportunity to get some feedback on your intermediate sort of, milestones and work, so that when you are on that stage, you have done it many times, you receive your feedback and you're comfortable and you can do a good job. And so again, my understanding is, Madalena, correct me if I'm wrong, so each team will have an assigned ambassador coach. So there will be people with whom you can work directly, right? And then I assume you can also get additional help by sending an email directly to coaching@xculture.org. We will monitor that as well. And so you will be able to get some sort of kind of walk-in help. Seems like Madalena's picture has frozen, but I hope I provided correct information. All right, and so let me spend a few minutes now also talk a little bit about the presentations and some tips based on my observations from the last semester. So let me open here a folder with my collection of resources from the last semester. and just to show you what the materials looked like when students did it the last time. So for your presentation, you will have 15 minutes total. Of those 15 minutes, you will have 12 minutes to do the presentation, and then 3 minutes will be left for questions and answers. Sometimes a little bit more if there are a lot of questions, but usually there will be 2-3 quick questions just to clarify stuff. So obviously the most common mistake we see is that students are not meeting their time quota. So even if you're 10 seconds over time, it's not a problem, and we will give you those 10 seconds, but you will get a reminder that you're running out of time. And usually it doesn't look, that doesn't look very nice. So when you start getting those warnings that you're almost out of time, kind of looks a little uncomfortable, and you start rushing, and so in your rehearsals, try to have your presentation down to about 10 minutes, because in real life it will probably take a little bit more time. So you want to be shorter rather than longer. And in fact, as I said, try to stay within 10 minutes or maybe even 9 minutes. So just in case something needs additional explanation, you have that extra time. You will be able to provide a one-page handout to the judges or to the company representatives. And so that one-page handout will be essentially like an executive summary. And so that's the only thing that they will read. And so I'll show you a couple of examples here of things that I think are good and things that are bad. So for example, here is one for, let me just show you two just right away so that you can see what they look like. So here are two that I wanted to compare. So one of them is from Italy, this one here, and one of them, I believe it was from Nashville. No, it's also from Italy. That's for Aerosole. So it's a company that makes soles for shoes, and that's a company that makes, if I remember correctly, coffee espresso machines. So one thing that I noticed that plays a huge role is the visual appeal of that slide. So we have some people who would submit literally just a page with plain text and nothing else, and obviously nobody reads it because people can only read it during the presentation because they have presentation after presentation, and so they will be tasked with paying attention to you as you are staying on the stage, and then at the same time reading your handout. And so if you have something like this, even though it looks nice in the sense that it has some graphics here, in my opinion, even this may be a little too much text. So it will be hard to read this and to listen to your presentation at the same time. Not to mention that it seems like the resolution here for some reason is low and it looks a little unprofessional, plus with the background colors, it's going to be a little harder to read. This one, in my opinion, is actually a better example. So it doesn't have much text, and I'm not sure if it was a purpose, to give more information or not, but it actually looks pretty nice. So as you can see, it's nice graphics, good colors, not too much text. They still have a nice, summary. Actually, I do have a recording of this presentation. I do have the actual presentation video file. So I remember that they started it like a TED Talk. So they started like who gets what money and how you can increase your revenue. So anyway, this is much easier to read, and it kind of follows each of these lines was, if I remember correctly, one slide. And so it was much easier to follow that way. So my recommendation here is to look at it as a work of art as opposed to as a detailed document. For example, when I teach my lectures, my slides are very wordy. I literally make my slides almost read like notes. And the goal there is to allow students to be able to read it even after the lecture, or even if they miss the lecture, so that they can read it, as I said, as class notes. I'm not trying to sell them anything, so I can afford to give them a little bit more text. With these presentations, you want to be like Steve Jobs. You want to just show a picture, maybe a couple of words. So here you're trying to sell your idea. And so if you get into too much text, I think you will lose them. And so here are just some of the examples. Also, just to give you a couple of examples of the actual presentation and slides, I think, again, I have quite a few here, but just to give you some examples, like for example, let's take team number 10 here. So that's the company that makes shoes. So nice colors, limited text, easy to follow. They will not get the slides afterwards, so they must be appealing at the time of the showing, and it doesn't matter really afterwards, so try to keep shorter text. They have nice pictures here, although in my opinion somewhat unprofessionally formatted, but not bad. So they have some stuff here. And I'm not sure why part of this is in Italian. I think they were just trying to please the audience, because obviously the clients were Italian, so it seems like they put some stuff in Italian literally just to make it, make a good impression. Now here is the Team 32, the one with Michael Jordan. So I don't remember what their slides look like, but yeah, so they had this team here. And so as you see, they had very, very little text. They went with minimalist design. Not sure if it's the best idea, but I think it was much easier to follow it that way. So they had some text here that in my opinion is a little too much, but they kept it very clean, very easy to read, some graphics. So that was, in my opinion, a pretty good design. Let me see if I can find a couple more that are really bad. So because we had some that were excessively wordy and almost impossible. Yeah, actually this is a good example. So they have here a lot of text, and in my opinion, or in my experience, when you have only 10 minutes to do the presentation, and when you have presentation after presentation, nobody is going to read all of this text. So in this format, it may be useful for you as a presenter, so you see all the text in front of you and you can literally just read it. But I think it's not the best format to make a sale. It's not the best way to impress your judges when you have so many words on each slide. And as you can see here, it's a lot of text. So I don't know, I would probably recommend staying, a little bit, with less text and more graphics. As I said, watch presentations by Steve Jobs when he was selling, iPad, iPhone. That's a very bad format if you're trying to deliver an informative lecture where the details are important and you need to educate people. But it's an excellent format when you need to pitch and sell your product, which in this case is the report. And so that's, I think, would be a better, more suitable format for you. Let me see if I can find something else here, just as an example, a couple more slides. Same thing here. So not bad, but just visually, imagine you're the busy CEO and you have fed so much text. I mean, to read it, like if I decided to read it, I don't think that 10, 12 minutes would be even enough just to read everything. And so, I don't know, it's not immediately clear what this message is saying. It has a lot of text. So I would go for more bullet points and just key figures as opposed to this much text. It just, as I said, it will be very hard for the audience to follow. So anyway, I want to stop here because we're almost out of time, but Karen, Ernesto, Tim, Madalena, do you have any other tips or observations based on your observation of those presentations? Obviously, you've seen enough of them.
Yes, maybe I would say that if you are anxious about the contents of your presentation, you should actually have a documents with the contents that you are going to say, but you don't have to put this inside the slides, so as Vas was suggesting. So you need the documents that is outside, and then in the slides there should be just the most important point in each slides. So just a sentence, a few words, and so the PowerPoint is not your delivery, but your delivery should be the presentation, and the PowerPoint is just a support for it. Yeah. The other points that come to my mind is that also your dressing, for example, your way of presenting is also important, and you should spend some time on it in order to be as professional as possible, because the expectation might be high. I remember a few years ago, before the Global Symposium in Miami, when we have been working for Louis Vuitton a few years ago, and I still remember there was the vice president of Louis Vuitton coming from Paris and spending all day there inside a room listening to a presentation. So he was an important manager and spending many hours listening to our presentation. So the same might actually happen here. So you have people that are very busy with important business and they will be there listening to your ideas. So it is very important that we get there with a very professional approach, also in the way we present, in the way we speak, but not everything has to be inside those slides, of course. But the slide is actually a support.
Yeah.
Boss, I'd say two things that I'd echo what you said and Ernesto. One is I would be prepared before you get to Calgary and spend that week rehearsing the presentation. That's where we become confident. And the teams that rehearse and are confident, they do much, much better than teams that do it on the fly.
Yeah, yeah. don't waste that resource. There is also a question about the group presentation from Camilla, a very good one. Does everyone have to present? This is a very, very good question, Camilla. We've seen some teams presenting collectively where every minute or two they would switch and somebody else starts talking. And we've seen some teams where one person or two people do most of the presentation while the rest of the team stands and watches. Well, you all will be on the stage. So it may be a good idea to, at the very least, introduce everyone, say what countries you're from, just spend 30 seconds on that, but say, here is Madalena from Italy, and here is, I don't know, Vas from Ukraine, and Ernesto from Italy, and Karen from the United States. Maybe a couple of things just to connect on the personal level. But when you want everyone to talk, sometimes switching from one person to another takes a little time. I think it looks a little better when everybody says at least a few words, but then again, you will have different language, level of proficiency in English. You will have different presentation skills. So if some people are more proficient, I suppose it's not a problem if they handle most of the presentation, but it's probably best when everybody says at least a few words. I don't know, what's your impression about that? Because that's an issue that I never kind of could answer clearly to myself. Karen, what do you say?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. I just remember getting this memory of when we went to Cozumel, and the students had this awesome opportunity to present on the stage on the cruise ship. And there were a few teams that they only had one or two presenters. And we thought, what a shame that people came from all over the world and didn't get the opportunity to speak a little bit. But at the same point, like, if the four of us present, we only have 10 minutes, it might feel even too mechanical if it's two here, two here, two here. So I think that the bonding, everything that you've all been talking about, getting to know your team really, really well, getting comfortable to a point where when you see each other's face, you say, I finally am seeing you. And then you get even closer. You've done all the work, and then you let that Calgary time, because it's going to go fast. It's, we have a week, but it goes so fast. And so that's really just for like the refining of the points, or saying, oh, we were a little off base, but now we've got it. I think that all the students understand going through X Culture. Once you submit that final report, you said, oh, but if we only had 3 more days, it would have been really, really good. So you're going to be in the same exact position, just multiply that by 10. So getting to know each other, getting really comfortable. And then if you have a few shy people, that's okay. They can say a little bit. But I think that it also impresses the clients when everybody has a voice. And when you feel unified, like, you can see it in body language with people. So just being comfortable with each other and the practice, because I know I'm not going to Copenhagen, but Vas will go, and he will go to a lot of awesome presentations from faculty all over the world. They've been waiting all year to present for their 15 minutes, and maybe they're going to be in an hour session with 4 other people. And there will be some times, and the person is not being not thoughtful, but they'll take longer, and then it takes away from other people's time. So the practice is really important. Even though all of you have had so much experience doing these things, it is a different experience. And so the more you practice, the more you give each other, just work with each other's strengths. If somebody's shy, don't make them talk for 5 minutes, but encourage them to show their face and, give a little bit of themselves in that presentation.
Yeah, and that, by the way, relates to the question by Zakila about the number of slides. We don't really have a number of slide limit. You can have as many or as few as you want. But the important thing here is that you probably will spend at least 1 minute to 2 minutes per slide. So if you have too many, it will probably go too long. But rehearsal is the most important thing. So try and see it. So as I said, if I were you, I would do the rehearsal, I don't know, at least 12 times. I did a TED Talk once, and I'm not sure if you saw the recording, but as you can tell now, I'm not a very good speaker. I tend to speak very fast. I tend to, my pronunciation is not very clear. But in that TED Talk, actually, I have a very good presentation, one that I'm proud of. But one thing that I didn't realize when I signed up for that is that they make you, in my case, I did 7 rehearsals on the stage before I actually did the final presentation. So not only it was countless sessions with the coaches, they literally hired coaches to help us with that 10-minute presentation, but they literally put me 7 times on the stage. There were the judges in the audience, and I would present, and they would critique me, and they would send me back home for another 5 days. Then I would come back. So looking back, that was a very good approach. So I don't know if I will be able to convince you to do those rehearsals, but I think that would be the best time spent if you do it. And as I said, even do a couple runs that are like as close to the real thing as possible. Like dress up the way you will dress up for the actual presentation, same timing, same everything, and just ask the coaches, maybe even some other students to be in the audience. And don't be afraid about negative feedback at that stage, because you can take it, you can change it, so that when you're actually on the stage, you will be, you will be more ready. So,
Hey, Vox, this is Tim. Can I?
yeah, go ahead. We can hear you. Yeah.
Who talks? In my experience, I've heard some students say, "I don't want to talk because I have an accent."
Oh, no problem.
But I've found all of the client companies love the different accents and people from around the world. So please don't let that stop you.
Yeah. Yeah, if I were you, again, my first slide would be the pictures of your team and the countries where you come from, and maybe even like a very short bio, because they will not be making the final decisions during the presentation. They will then convene, after the presentations, and they will kind of look at your one-page handouts. We'll try to remember who you were, what you did, and so if they remember you as people, I think they will also be more inclined, more favorable towards your presentation. So there's a question from Sarah about the report. So no, you don't have to provide a report. And if I may, I'll provide a little historic overview here. So when we did the very, very, very first challenge, X-Culture meeting, it was in Fort Lauderdale in Miami in 2012, I believe. At that time, we went with what we called a 24-hour competition. So students all arrived in Florida, and at the beginning of the conference, we gave them the challenge and gave them 24 hours to prepare the solution, and then the next day they would present their work. That was not a very good idea because, first of all, some students, I remember there was this guy, Paul, I forgot his last name, from New Zealand. He literally spent like 30 hours flying to Florida, and right off the plane, he now has to spend 24 hours developing the solution to the challenge. So he literally didn't sleep like for 3 days in a row just because of that, So after that, we started giving the challenges in advance, and people had time to present, but the final solution submission was the paper report. And so we would get those papers, and then it would be like the second last day of the conference. And the clients would have then 1 day to read them and select the winners, and only 3, I believe, teams that wrote the best reports would be invited to do the presentation. And that was a very bad idea. It took us several years to realize how bad it was, because first, not everyone even got to present. And as Karen said, some teams would fly, some students would fly from, another, the other part of the world, but at the same time, not even have a chance to present. And so that was obviously not a very good point or idea. Second, writing the reports takes a little more time than preparing the presentation, but also it takes a lot of time to read them. And I remember working with the clients, trying to convince them to do the readings, basically the night before the presentations. And so for them, it was always a challenge because you get like 30 reports and each has like 30 pages. It's just a lot of reading. And so we would recruit professors who would help with that. So it was a very, very hectic, difficult process. And then we were on that cruise ship in 2015, I believe it was, or something like that. And so at that point, we didn't have a good internet connection and we didn't have printers. And all of a sudden, printing the reports was not a possibility. Like technically, it was impossible. They did have some slow internet on the cruise ship, but it was not very convenient to submit those reports on time, and we were afraid that it wouldn't work. And somebody, I can't remember who that was, but somebody said, hey, maybe we shouldn't ask them to do the reports. Maybe we should just ask them to do the presentations, and so we will judge them based on the presentations. And that simplified everything so much. For the clients, they don't have to do any readings. They just sit for a few hours, watch your presentations, and make decisions based on those presentations. Second, everybody gets to present. Third, you not only try to impress them with what you have on paper, but also with how you present it. So it's more skill development for you. And so that's how we are doing now. So you don't have to have a paper report. You can write it. It's not a bad idea to have it, or maybe have, more detailed slides for yourself as you're working with that. But in the end, it will be only what you put on the screen in terms of the slides and one-page submission that you give to the clients right before your presentation. Can we use other tools besides PowerPoint? Anna Carolina is asking, what could be other tools?
For example, I remember in Italy for Nuova Simonelli, and there was a presentation where the students have been using actually sort of simulation of a coffee machine, and it was made on paper. So this coffee machine was supposed to interact with your smartphone, and so they had some bells and this coffee machine on paper. It was actually very impressive. So who knows, if you have an idea about simulating an event, a service inside that airport, who knows? That might impress actually people, but you have to be smart in that, because it has to be a sort of a small theatrical performance up there. But it might be, because you know, it is a presentation, so yes, there are slides, but it is not an academic presentation. You have to impress those managers. So if you have any smart idea, yes.
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea if you can use some like physical props on the scene. Another idea I like, Karen Linden here is actually an expert. She often uses, instead of PowerPoint, she uses other presentation software. I forgot what they're called, but there is this one where the slides are moving, and then there is another one that looks almost like a cartoon. So free tools, and it's not necessarily that they give better information than PowerPoint, but they look different. So they move like cartoons, and you know, you can zoom in, zoom out. I think that just allows you to stand out from the, you look different. And I think that would be very wise to use one of those. What are they called, Karen? You should remember.
Prezi's one of them.
Prezi,
and then Powtoons was another, like the free version. So there's a lot of free stuff out there. They just want to master it before they get, because it will add another layer of stress, but it's one more tool that you can learn.
The content kind of looks like slides anyway, but it does definitely add a little extra, like visual,
like movement,
different and less boring, right?
Yes.
There was also one team I remember once did a presentation as a cartoon, like literally they drew cartoons with hand, and so they almost did like a role play instead of a formal presentation. Again, that was very unusual at the very least, so definitely wakes up your crowd. Because one thing that will happen, so imagine yourself, you have to sit through 10 presentations, even if it's only 15 minutes. And in reality, with the switching and everything, it will be more like 20 minutes. We are talking about like 3-4 hours of just sitting there. And then what happens afterwards is most teams, they kind of follow the same routine. So they come to the stage and they say, hi, my name is Vas, I'm from Ukraine, and my name is Karen, and she's from the United States, and here we will talk about the Olympic sports and the Lake Louise. And so Karen will talk about marketing. Karen says, I'll talk about marketing, and marketing is very good, and yeah. And so now Tim will talk about, logistics. And yes, logistics is very important, this is not work. And so they kind of talk in this tone, and they switch all the time, and it's like over and over and over again. And so those judges start falling asleep, literally, like start losing it. And then once in a while, another team shows up, and they do it like this. As I said, I still remember, and those of you professors who were there, remember there was this girl in Miami. She was here from Elon University in North Carolina, but I don't remember her name. But when they came to the stage, they kind of almost like danced to the stage, and they were talking like, la la la, la 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 la, la 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 la. I don't know what they were talking, but everybody woke up, everybody was paying attention, everybody was kind of laughing. And again, you probably don't want to overdo it too much, but if you can wake them up, with something slightly different, different rhythm, different approach, I think that will give you at least the benefit of, they will listen to you. Because in many
cases, if they are sleeping, waking them up is critical.
Yeah, exactly.
Let your personality come out.
Yeah. And that's where the rehearsals come into play. Like literally ask the judges, whoever you will be presenting to, your relatives, friends, other students, coaches, ask them if they find it to be too boring, too monotonous, because they will tell you, and you will be able to do something. And if you want to spice it up, and if you would like to use some maybe jokes or some different style, again, you don't want to overdo it. And so the rehearsal will allow you to test if it's working, if it's really giving you the effect that you want.
Hey, boss, one other point. On Monday, when we're in Calgary, they're going to get to meet some of the representatives from the company. So that's a good time you can gauge if they got a sense of humor, if they're serious.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you always want to know a little bit about them before you do something crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
Most of these companies are pretty humorous, low key. So I think they're willing to see different things.
Yeah, absolutely. So people, Ezekiel here is recommending, so Prezi is one of them. Yes, Keynote, Powtoon. So there are other tools that are free. You can use them. They allow you to create a video from the slides, or, you can go, click, slide to slide, but that extra graphics sometimes allows you to stand out. Same thing, by the way, with the handouts, with the one-pagers. I don't have pictures saved, but I remember some of them were designed using those, what they call infographic software. So again, kind of the same text, but it's presented as infographics, in the format that looks You know what I'm talking about here. And it seems to me that those are usually better received than just plain text. So again,
you can go out online and just look for like the top 5 infographic tools.
Yeah.
And you'll see Canva, and you'll see, the same 5 or so. Once you master one, you can pretty much master any of the other free ones.
Yeah.
But like you said, with that one-page handout, faces are great to keep on there. Mm-hmm. Keep it like an infographic. There's so many times that I'll listen to the presentations, and they're so good, and you think, how would I ever forget that second presentation? But then you start mixing it up after a while. So you want your clients to keep you in mind and say, oh, that was that team. It was this main idea. So your one page is very important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, one thing again that I always regret is that since the presentations will be happening at the same time for the different companies, even professors will not be able to see all of them. And for students, I think we allow them to see presentations for the other 2 clients, but not for the client of their own. Is that correct, right?
Right.
Yes.
So, but we will try to record at least some of them so that you can watch them later and learn from them, and maybe even use it as a kind of educational opportunity. So, but yeah, I wish I could see all of them. It's just logistically impossible, even with only 30 teams. It's just too difficult to make it, to make them all available. But we'll try to record them. Maybe we'll just record them, and then everybody will be able to watch the rest. All right, so we are out of time. The only thing is I noticed I had the recording on pause for a little while at the beginning of the session. And so just to reiterate, so we have 3 clients. We have Lake Louise, which is a ski resort, and they are asking for your help with how to increase essentially the number of clients who use their winter sports and facilities. So how to attract more skiers from Canada, from overseas throughout the winter season. So you have a lot of information in the challenge instructions, but the main challenge is how do you essentially attract more people. And you can use any ideas or provide any ideas from making the services more attractive, but also maybe to change in the pricing structure by maybe using some sort of subscription businesses, all kinds of other things, maybe or teaming up or partnering with other services in the Banff National Park. So maybe it would be some sort of like a pass that not only is good for skiing, but maybe also for hot, radium, whatever they call them, the hot tubs or hot springs, so things like that.
And then the client has said here that diversity is a major issue, that most of their clients are older, white, and rich.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. So there are whole demographics that are not even tapped. And so, yes, absolutely, you might want to look into that. Then another challenge was the airport. Again, it's a major hub, it's a major airport. They're doing pretty well, but they can do even better. And so they're asking for your ideas for how to make this airport more interesting and attractive to clients. So for those who are flying in Calgary, through Calgary, and from Calgary. And again, so here they are looking for ideas not only related to, how to improve the services, but anything else that you think can improve and expand their business is on the table. And again, so maybe you've seen something interesting at other airports that they do. Maybe you know of some programs that other airports implemented to increase the passenger flow. So any of those ideas would be appreciated.
Hey, Boss, just to clarify that one.
Yes.
That what you're saying is partially true. What they're trying to increase is non-aeronautical revenue.
Yes, absolutely.
So you want more people, but they're buying things at the shops, they're buying things at restaurants, parking. So that's the specific area.
Yeah, precisely. If I remember correctly, it's about 1/3 of the total revenue, right? Because most of the revenue comes from, airplane landing fees and all that stuff. Right. But they specifically want to increase the revenue from people while they are in the airport. So not the tickets and baggage, but other types of services.
Yeah, and there's no problem bringing more people in, but specifically it's the revenue they get from these non-aeronautical things.
Exactly. So anything you've seen at other airports that generates revenue and you think would be a good, new service product, offering in Calgary, bring those ideas. And I think we fully recorded the one on the city of Calgary. So, but yes, the idea there was that there is a big city, there is a chunk of land in the middle of the city that is relatively underdeveloped, and they're trying to make a way, to turn it into like an oasis of urban life in that area of the city. So any ideas for what kind of infrastructure could go there, programs, rules, whatever else. So they're very interested in how to make that, land into a comfortable part of the city. So yeah, any ideas? Again, maybe you've seen something in your city, maybe you visited some cities that do something interesting there. So they're very interested in those kinds of ideas. All right, so I think that's all. Let's stop here, and the recording will be available for those who could not attend live. A special huge thank you again to Tim and Ernesto. As I said, I know how many meetings and how much work it took to prepare those challenges. So grateful that you were working with those companies and making it happen. So, all right, yeah, then we'll meet again on the 24th.